You're listening to the Mindfully Gay podcast, where we explore queer life through honest conversations, mindful presence, and meaningful connection.
In today's episode, we're revisiting the origins of pride, how it once brought queer folks together in joy, resistance, and celebration, and what it could become again. Welcome to Reclaiming Pride. What does it really mean today? Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Mindfully Gay podcast. I am John with my good friend, Jerry, and we are so glad that you are here with us today.
Have you noticed that when we start the podcast, we do the jazz fingers? Welcome.
We're gay, Jerry. Everything begins with jazz hands.
Anyone watching the YouTube videos when they come to the retreat will say, "Hi, I'm John and Jerry."
I do it in my yoga classes too, because I film yoga. Hi, everybody. It's just our way. It's just our way. Well, we are glad that you are here, and for this week, we were thinking about, we had a lot of things were going through our minds as far as what we can talk about today, but we are getting close to a celebration, a summer celebration of Pride. And we thought it might be a good idea just to, look at Pride in 2025, what might it mean, what it could potentially mean with current circumstances. But maybe, I don't know, just some reclaiming and reminding of what Pride really is, what it could be for you this year, and really be mindful about what you can do around planning around your Pride celebration.
Well, I heard Donald Trump had canceled Pride forever.
Among other things.
No more Pride.
No more Pride.
All Pride will stop now.
There's no more Black History Month. There's no more Native American Awareness Month.
We're just all the same.
And we were talking about that before we hit record. And, in that regard, there's been some executive orders on that regard. And what's happening is we're not going to see things like Pride show up on our calendars, our digital calendars.
It's on my calendar.
But yes, exactly. We're making sure it's still on our calendars, and hopefully it's still on your calendars, because we don't think Pride is just going to be gone, right? There's going to be Pride. There's going to be Pride celebrations. There will still be parades. There will still be parties and whatnot. So let's make sure that we keep that in mind, that we're still here. We're not going anywhere.
Well, it's interesting to have lived long enough to kind of see this interesting transition around Pride.
Yeah.
And I didn't come around until the 90s. And so I know Pride existed through the 70s and the 80s.
Right. Oh, yeah.
And correct me if I'm wrong. I may not have the history right on this, but I thought Pride was meant to draw focus or attention to like the Stonewall riots, which was the birth of kind of like gay revolution, if you will.
Yeah. Because that happened so Stonewall was in 1969. I think the first kind of Pride celebration was a few years after that.
Yeah.
I think like in 71, 72. And yeah, you're right. It was to recognize and remember kind of that particular moment, because it really sparked a moment of activism, right, in our community. And so it became this celebration of we're here, we're queer, can get used to it kind of a thing.
Right.
Out and proud, here we are, and we've got something to say, and we're going to celebrate who we are. And it's just evolved, it's just grown over these decades.
Well, and if I recall correctly, just through history, right, that kind of the political statement of the time was coming out of the shadows, was about visibility.
Yeah.
So the Pride celebrations became an opportunity for us to come together in a communal setting.
Right.
but to also be witnessed and to be like, wow, these people exist and they exist in numbers and masses. And where was your first Pride?
Ooh, I lived in the Bay Area because I grew up in Oakland. I think my first Pride was, I think it was San Francisco. I think San Francisco was my first Pride.
So a small little gathering.
Just
in the
small
park.
little thing on the corner of, and I was actually, I can't remember how old I was and when this was when I went, but it was, I remember being a little overwhelmed because it's huge. It's a big parade. There's a lot of people. It takes up a big part of the city. But just thinking about, that visibility part of it. Because I think about Stonewall and just that era before that where, gays were, certainly on the down low, very secretive, very, scary to be out. And so that's why we had our clubs and bars, and that's where we can congregate and be and see people like us, right? And so when there was that raid and everything is just, brought to the forefront, I think we embraced that as a people, as a community, to say, no, we're not going to be shut behind closed doors anymore. And we want to be seen. We need to be seen. We're an important part of the community, our state, and beyond, right? So when I think about my first Pride, I was, like I said, it's hard to remember how old I was. I guess I was in my 20s when I went to my first Pride. And I was certainly out because I came out pretty early. But it was being in the midst of a grander community. I think that's why I was so overwhelmed, because I didn't realize how big this community really was.
Yeah.
And the many facets of it. And I was maybe amazed at how diverse and vast it really was. And I think after the fact and then proceeding to go to future prides after that, really being able to see and witness how do I say, how important, or I guess it's about the diversity and how different our community is. I remember one year, it wasn't Pride, but it was around, and I was living here in Salt Lake City at the time, where I was made aware of our courts, our queens, our royal court, and I think it was around Memorial Day, I think, and there's a lot of grand, pomp and circumstance around the royal courts. Coronation, yes, exactly it, and I was just, wow, we have royalty. Hey, I mean, I think that kind of put the crown on top in regards to, wow, we are special. We are different. We are rad. We are cool. We've got royalty. We are that. And I think that just made me feel extra special.
Yeah.
And to be able to celebrate who I am, like, yeah, because we've got royalty.
Do you remember, because I think you came to Salt Lake City around the same time we did, but I remember, and I know there's people in our community here who talked about Pride events. I think that might have been at Liberty Park or in other places, but my first memory of Pride was where the Gallivan Center is.
Oh, yeah.
And before so we have this little park called the Gallivan Center, and there's an ice skating rink, and there's a stage.
That's right.
And now there's a big Marriott Hotel, but before the Marriott Hotel was there, that was a big open green space.
That's right.
And I remember there were maybe 30 to 50 booths set up, and there was a stage area where there was entertainment. Mm-hmm. But it was definitely a very gay, lesbian exclusive event. It didn't draw in people from outside of the queer community.
Yeah.
And my first active memory of Pride was showing up, and there was a guy wearing a peacock.
Wearing a peacock.
Literally wearing a peacock. He had on like this green gown, but on his shoulder, he had a stuffed peacock. And then the tail feathers kind of swooped down around his back and around.
Wow.
Yeah. And I just thought, oh my God. Like, my first thought was, who would ever think of that?
Yeah.
Right? Because it was over the top amazing.
Yeah.
And it was also frightening too.
Yeah.
For like the first get, like, oh my gosh, I'm with the freaks.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
Now we celebrate the freaks. But it was definitely like, what I kind of remember is like, you would go to the gym and you would go throughout your day and you would recognize people from the clubs or from other places, and you didn't necessarily engage, but you might acknowledge or give a look. And so at the Pride event, it felt like we now had the freedom to connect.
Yeah.
And acknowledge each other.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember that just being a really powerful experience.
It is. It really gives that sense of, this is our place.
Yeah.
And this belongs to us. It's a safe space. And, because out there, we don't know what it's like out there.
Yeah.
I might get in trouble. I don't want to get in trouble with you, or you get in trouble with me, if I somehow acknowledge your existence, or at least acknowledge that you might be gay out there, because I don't know your circumstances, right? But here, under the
You're fair game.
under the rainbow of love and pride, there's that fear kind of goes away.
Yeah.
And like, hey, how are you?
I thought I recognized you. And what's interesting is the event was so grassroots. Like, I remember the booths were people who brought their own card tables and their own chairs, and nothing was polished or, signs written with magic marker, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
And just learning that there were all these, like, there were people who liked to square dance.
Right.
And there were people who were affiliated with some religion, but were also gay.
Mm-hmm.
And it was fun. It was engaging. It was like, it felt like you got your cup filled.
Yes.
Through the event.
Yes. Going back to what, that you saw the person,
Peacock.
The peacock. Yeah. The person dressed as the peacock. I mean, just the artistry and the pageantry of it all, and the expression, the artistic value that's also is on display, right? Another part of that, how unique and special and wonderful we are as a people. And when you see it on display, like, yes, at first, yes, it's quite, whoa, you're taken aback, or it's kind of shocking. And at first it's kind of in your face, and how do I take this all in? But you kind of, oh, okay.
Does that come in my size?
Yeah. At least I found, like, I started to soften around that and felt like, oh, yes, I do belong here.
Yeah.
This is me.
It's art.
This is art. This is where I'm supposed to be. And to the point about, like, the booths, I think we still see that, there's a lot of booths, but we still see those groups, like gay square dancing, or the bowling group, the religious group, come to our church, we celebrate because it's open and receptive and all of that. I think it gave people an opportunity to see what was in their communities, to help build community and friendship and connections. Like, oh, there's bowling? I like bowling. There's gay bowling leagues? Hey,
Gay
sign
ball?
me. Yeah, gay baseball? Sign me up, right?
Yeah.
It gave people an opportunity to see that I'm welcomed.
Yeah.
I'm okay and accepted, and there's an invitation for me to show up.
Right. I mean, I think what I remember from the early days is how very grassroots and organic it was. Going around to the booths may have been interesting to see what was out there, but it was also a place where you could connect. Like you knew people. And I know as a therapist in the community, and I don't think I had started Pride counseling at this point, but I started to kind of build this repertoire and an understanding of what was in our community and what the potential was in our community, where I might potentially get linked into, but also help other people get linked to it. And it's interesting. We were talking about topics today and we were kicking around the topic of community.
Right.
And it's interesting. We landed on pride, but what are we talking about?
It's community.
Community.
Yeah.
And then at some point here in Salt Lake City, we kind of outgrew that Gallivan Center.
Yeah.
Because I remember the first one I went to, there was maybe 300 or 400 people there. It didn't feel like there was a lot. But then follow-up years, it just got bigger and bigger and more packed. And, you know, and you really just had room to stand around. But you went because you were standing around your community, your friends,
your people.
Whether you knew them or not.
Right.
And then we moved over to the county building, which was a much bigger venue. And I think at that time, Pride Counseling had gotten started, Queer Spirit was going.
Yeah, we've
done it just made common sense for us to be there, be set up. And again, it was but at some point, I guess where I'm kind of going with this is, I feel like in many ways, as progress happened, more diverse people started coming to the Pride festivals, meaning now allies were showing up and straight people were showing up. And but it became, I remember when the first corporation showed up, it was a bank.
Yeah.
And I remember everyone standing around looking at this bank thinking, what
are they doing here?
Right. Not because it felt like they were out of place, but we had not had corporate sponsorship or acknowledgement.
Right.
We weren't seen as a financial asset to these corporations. And so to see this bank there, it's like, wow, like who knew that this bank organization was interested in us as queer people? Because politically and socially, we were pariahs.
Yeah.
And so I remember when that happened. Now, I feel like going to the Pride event is like going to an elaborate mall experience.
Yeah, it's interesting. What came to mind was, you know, if the origins of Pride was to be more visible and to, you know, we're here, we're queer, get used to it, you know, to make our declaration that we are a people and we exist and we are relevant. It's like, I think we made that point and we were successful, right? And then something shifted. Because we were successful in being visible, it opened the door for, you know, the allies to show up, the corporations to get involved, straight people to get involved. And of course, our community is certainly expanding, you know, in the queer community, it's certainly expanding. And so that whole new realm of representation is also showing up. So yeah, it's kind of made this shift. And I think part of it is that we're seeing a lot more, at least I'm seeing a lot more of that corporation and sponsorship stuff. And it feels like, yeah, where am I? Am I at the mall or?
Well, and I think it's important to recognize that prior to this time, the corporate sponsorships we had, and they were strategic, were from tobacco industries and from alcohol industries.
Yeah, liquor,
right? They were willing to be there.
True.
But there was also a marketing ploy.
Right.
And the consequences, I think part of the consequences is, where did we find our sense of identity in those days? Was at the clubs and in the bars. And we also had a place to anesthetize our pain and our frustrations.
Makes me wonder if that was, because I've seen it in other communities, where it's a way to kind of keep this bubble, keep this shell over a particular group.
Well, and as you were talking, and as we're kind of reminiscing about, we're seeing this emergence of corporate America, they see us as a marketing tool. They're also taking, this is complete opinion, I don't have any data to support this, but they're taking liberty in defining how we should look as queer folks. So if I go down the ramp at Delta, whatever Delta we're talking about, right? But I'll see pictures
Right.
of 30-something white, in shape, handsome gay guys
Right.
sharing an experience together,
Right.
right?
Mm-hmm.
In many ways, right, corporate America has taken on gay marketing and has decided what is the face, what is the identity of those that we want to align ourselves with.
Mm-hmm.
And I think in that context is an exploitation of the disparities in our community, of the differences of body shapes and sizes and personalities and races and genders and identity, right? It becomes a very singular narrative
Right.
that subconsciously many of us are identifying with.
True.
Like, what if Delta had a picture of Bruce and I?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Or a picture of that guy in the peacock feathers.
No. I don't want him sitting next to me.
Exactly. Right? I think that's
Yeah.
the reaction. We want to have a nice picture perfect, representation of this particular group. It's like, okay, we will acknowledge you, but only in this frame.
Right. And I think just kind of keeping on this like social political kind of platform, I think many communities, and I think Salt Lake City was seduced by this as well, is we need money, so we're going to sell out to tobacco and alcohol and to corporate America. We're going to trade out the value of how pride serves the community and cater to a corporate language because they're going to give us the money. Because, how many years have we said we'd sure like to have a presence at Pride, but we can't afford it now.
Yeah.
Whereas before, we just broke open the piggy bank and we could show up.
Yeah, we set up our little card table and go.
Yeah. And even if we did show up, what I've noticed about the landscape of Pride is those groups and organizations are not like incorporated with the businesses that are there. They're kind of segregated.
Mm-hmm.
Right? It's almost like you're not as relevant as these voices. Right. And I've often argued that our queer community really needs to be looking at our own internalized identity politics and not just beyond the obvious around like cis and transgender and stuff like that. But as much as we're wanting inclusivity, the seduction to play to capitalism tends to take over.
Yeah.
And the consequences, how does that play into our sense of identity and belonging? Do I go to Pride and feel like I'm part of community?
Mm-hmm.
And we still call it Pride, and this kind of takes where I think we want to take the conversation is like with Mindfully Gay. I think Pride is incredibly relevant.
Yes, and important.
But what does it mean when we take it back to the micro, when we take it back to our individual sense of identity and connectedness and belonging? What is it that we hunger for? What is it that we seek? What is it that we want to, what does pride mean to us?
Mm-hmm.
And I think, I love that we're having this conversation now because come the first weekend in June, like if I treated the Pride celebration as a ceremony or a ritual, before I go into ritual, I always set that place of intention.
Right.
And part of the place of intention is when I'm done with that process, how do I want to go home feeling?
Right.
How do I want to experience it?
Good. Yeah.
And so if Pride's our ritual,
I like this.
How do we want to come home from the experience?
Mm-hmm. I think this is a good approach.
Yeah.
Looking at Pride as a ceremony, as a ritual, and going in with some kind of intention, doing your work, so to speak, and then how would you like to feel on the other side of it?
Yeah.
I think it's a wonderful way to approach it. And as I'm kind of thinking about it, some ideas are running through my head. What comes to mind is just some key words that are kind of popping up in my brain: celebration, just fun, expressing myself in a free fashion, being seen, kind of family, because we've often talked about, it's like a family reunion when you show up and see all your folks that, you haven't seen in a while, let's say, like, oh, so it feels like a big family reunion. So a gathering, community building. But how do I want to feel if that's the experience and that's what I get to do when I'm there at the Pride Festival? How do I want to feel on the other side of that? I want to feel motivated. I want to feel like I could continue that self-expression very openly, even in my workspace or home, or I want to continue to show up in that prideful way, in that celebratory way, in that unique self-expression kind of way in every aspect of my living.
Mm-hmm.
That's some of the brainstorming that's kind of going through my head.
Yeah. I as you were talking, I was just kind of, people don't know this, we kind of keep a list of topics, right? And I think the last couple of days we've been kicking back all these topics, and they seem to be showing up, right? Like the coming out process, coming out at work, coming out with family, community. Today's episode is giving you multiple topic coverage.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
One thing I like to play with, like the word pride, Pride Day celebration, right? We use the same language repeatedly, and I think we should. But if I were to eliminate the word pride, what other words would describe? Like if I were calling it something celebration, what would I put in place of pride?
What would it be?
I don't know, because I'm having a couple words. Authenticity Day. Knowing. I feel like I need to qualify that. I'm not exactly sure, but I think when I really come in alignment with who I am, I have a sense of knowing. I had a conversation with a client the other day who, there's a lot of people talking crap about this guy from multiple places, and it's not necessarily justified. And he's always kind of chasing the narrative to try to correct it. And my reframe for him was this sense of knowing yourself. What happens when you show up and you just know who you are and you show up unapologetically and authentically? And so authenticity and knowing come to mind. Can you think of any other words? Synonyms.
Synonyms. Or cinnamons.
Now I'm hungry.
Celebration still kind of pops up for me. Visibility.
What does that mean to celebrate? To enthusiastically acknowledge.
Yeah, enthusiastically acknowledge.
Yeah. So instead of Pride Day, we'll have Enthusiastically Knowledge Day. But
that kind of fits.
It kind of shifts the dialogue a little bit, right?
Mhm.
Like, so if we were going to have this, what did we just say? Enthusiastically Acknowledging Day?
Yeah.
So what would that parade look like?
I don't think it'd look any different. I really don't.
Well, would corporate America be able to align itself with it?
Well, I would say not completely, because in a way, my fantasy is to kind of go back to the roots, go back to our roots, go back to
Which is community.
Yeah, go back to how it used to be back in our day, where it was really community driven. And you showed up. I was excited to go because I was going to be with my people.
Yeah.
And not, surrounded by, oh, there's such and such bank and there's such and such corporation and oh, look at all those booths, things that cost so much, and where's the and all the food booths and trucks and like, oh my
Well,
gosh.
no, we need to keep those.
Yeah, we do need to keep the food booths and everything. But just quickly, some of the gay bowling league, yeah, those booths are kind of on the fringes of the festival. What's forefront and what you're going to see immediately are going to be the big corporations who probably put down the big dollars. I don't know. I'm making assumptions here.
Wouldn't it be interesting if all the corporations were just kind of given a working bulletin board, and it just kind of lists, hey, this bank supports you and this airline supports you.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just kind of like, wow, look at all those. I could see a big bulletin board with 200 corporations, and yet the fairgrounds would be people connecting, celebrating, talking, dancing.
Yeah.
And we would have the Mindfully Gay booth and the bowling booth and the square dancing, like the community grassroots people who are really driving community,
right?
Because the banks aren't doing it,
no,
right? And the DJs, and they're not driving community; they're there because they're making a buck.
Mm-hmm.
We want you to like us so that you invest in us,
yeah.
Which is, I want to invest. I'm going to choose a corporation that has known Costco. Costco's going to have my business because they believe in DEI, right? But yeah, how do we bring front and center our grassroots efforts of creating community?
Mm-hmm.
And there's tons of people out there. It's not just the politicians.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
And I have a lot of friends who are in the political sphere of things. And frankly, I think if they were here having this conversation, they would be a big part of it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Because I know in talking to them privately, they wonder about that.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, I can keep going. I wish our Pride organizing committees was as invested in sitting down and dissecting, well, what does Pride mean for us? How do we connect pridefully? What's my own story of Pride in terms of my queer identity? And how could this festival serve our community as opposed to pay off our debt at the center?
Exactly. Yeah, there's definitely needs to be, at least in Salt Lake City, a kind of a shift in that dynamic. Part of my fantasy, if they had to re-envision Pride and how it was set up, like you said, yeah, a bulletin board or something that listed, sponsor or corporations that support our community. But if they wanted to be there, I'm thinking, how there's the beer garden, just kind of, it was just this little section that's kind of off in the corner somewhere. So all the corporations can have a little section over there in the corner, in the back somewhere, where the rest of the festival in the park area, is a celebration and recognition, the visibility of the grassroots stuff, all the folks and people and companies maybe that are gay run and really are the driving force of our community, no matter where you are. And we see that and we can support them, right? And celebrate them and get involved with them rather than getting blindsided, I think, by all this other stuff, the other kind of glitz and monikers that just get in the way. Yeah, I think that would be my vision of a new setup for the festival itself. And because I think the fun things, we got the food trucks, those kind of booths that are that are run by gay companies and things like that. I do like the concerts and the music and the drag queens. We get drag queens that come and perform and all of that.
Drag queens come to Pride?
Yeah. Things like that. I think I'd be more inclined to go to Pride because I don't know. Maybe I don't know if it's because of my age or because of this shift in what's being out there in Pride. I don't feel as excited in going to the Pride Festival, like I used to. And like I said, maybe I'm getting older and kind of growing out of some of that. But I still want community.
Yeah.
And I still want to be around people, that will inspire me, um, and I can certainly be myself and express myself in a certain way. I do miss that.
I was just having a thought. You know how
Mm.
we like to have guests on occasion?
Yes.
Wouldn't it be nice to have the leaders of the Pride Festival come and join us?
Ooh.
And because
Wow.
I'm thinking about what we're trying to do with Mindfully Gay, which
Mm.
is create dialogue and discussion that's kind of built around the philosophy of what I learned from Harry Hayes, and that is coming to know the who and what and why and how we exist as queer people in the generalized community. Would it be interesting to talk to a couple of the leaders of the Pride Center to explore, not for them to come and market the event or to market the Pride Center, but to really have a heartfelt dialogue and conversation about, it would be nice to see our community leaders having a process and doing their work around these issues.
Mm-hmm.
I think in some regards, we think we have it figured out.
Mm-hmm.
But we haven't created the platform for us to come together and to work it through.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that's different for everyone, but I think that's the magic of our retreats, right? Is we bring a collective together. And Nick said this a couple of times in the earlier podcast, like, these are not questions I ever thought about asking myself that seem so relevant, but I never thought about it.
Just didn't think about it. Yeah.
And if we were thinking about our sense of identity, our sense of pride, our sense of community, how would that shape how we interact with each other, how we talk to each other, how do we engage in social media platforms to each other, right? I think sometimes part of our core story as queer folks is we're always working to get acceptance. And so we create a lot of organizational structure and objectives. And, but we've never stopped to ask ourselves these questions and the relevance and I think it could change the arc of even our civil rights conversations. Instead of trying to convince people we exist, what if we had the power and the medicine to show up in our knowing, and to just be recognized, right, as these beings of light and magic and medicine? That could revolutionize how we do things as a broader community and culture in this country, or in the world.
Yeah. And you saying that, because like I said earlier, I think we be with the Pride festivals that happen every year across the country. I think we have succeeded in being visible. We can check that box many times, and so the visibility has become for somebody else and for something else, and perhaps it's time to come back to ourselves, that we don't have to show anybody. We don't have to prove ourselves to anybody. We've done that. People know we exist. We're relevant. We're not going anywhere.
Yeah.
But coming back to grassroots of why pride, this enthusiastic acknowledgement. Is that what we said? To celebrate ourselves. Just to show up and be, not to prove a point, not to sell a product, but just, here I am, this is who I am, and I get to be me in this free environment. I would like to see that. And then even going back to, it would be interesting to have a conversation with those leaders, because I think what has happened, again, this is just an assumption, here we are, half a century or plus of Pride celebrations. And we've shifted and moved into a pattern of, okay, Pride is coming up. June is Pride Month. Okay.
What are you wearing?
Not even that. It's
because we don't wear much.
How much is it going to cost? Who's going to be our marshal? That's going to be leading the parade. How How many booths do we want? It becomes a business thing.
Yeah.
Where are we going to have it? We need to call such and such to close off these streets. It's that stuff, which of course you have to do. But I think are they having the conversation about why are we doing this?
Yeah. In December and January, what if we were just having heart circles?
Mm-hmm.
And right now, our heart circles are on social media. And right now, that social media narrative is built around a story of fear. Fear, I would say historical traumas coming up. But what's interesting is it often feels like it's coming up in the sense of isolation, as opposed to, man, when we organize, when we pull together, right, we get marriage equality.
Yeah.
When we organize and pull together, we get the Reagan administration to pay attention to how they're exterminating us, right? We have to recognize that this legacy of pride is an ongoing extension of when we've come together as community. And frankly, it's not those corporations showing up in those political battles. It's us.
It's us.
In our peacock outfits.
Yes. Yes. Something's happening. I'm thinking about seeing this as a ritual and how I want to feel on the other side of it. I want to feel, like I said, I want to feel motivated and inspired. I want to feel fed. I want to feel enriched. I want to feel like if my, spirit has been depleted for whatever reason, I want to feel rejuvenated.
Yeah.
And if this ceremony, this ritual has a part in doing that, I'm going to show up. That's why I want to go to a Pride celebration. I want to be fed.
The very first time I went to a Radical Fairy sanctuary, it was with some of my friends who are indigenous people who were taking a ceremony to be on that land. And there was maybe under 100 people who had come to this event. But it was the first time I had ever been in a dedicated queer space. And there were men, women, this was many years ago, but transgender people basically. But it was a very eclectic blend of the queer community coming together for a spiritual format.
Right.
The heart engagement, the sharing, the celebration, the eccentric artist expression of spirit. When I left that experience, I literally was emotional because I did not realize how starved my spirit was for that sense of community.
Right.
And I kind of cried as we were leaving because I didn't want to go. Like it felt like queer nirvana. And I think that's, you and I talked about this. That's what motivated Queer Spirit. That's what motivates Mindfully Gay, is creating that cohesion. And when I think of the Pride Day event, and as I hear you talk about that physiological, emotional, spiritual fulfillment, that's what I would like to have from my Pride event too, is to just show up and see relationship and companionship and community and to witness and be a part of the beauty of who we are.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I like, again, maybe it's because of my age, I'm a little jaded and don't feel as enthusiastic about going to Pride, because the last few times I have often left just feeling like, oh, it's just too crowded. Oh, it's just, I feel like I'm suffocating. I'm claustrophobic. This is not fun. I want to get out of here. That's pride. I don't want that to be my pride experience, which leads me to think about what we did last year, around Pride. We wanted to have, and we did do it. We had a sweat lodge and kind of this ceremony Well, actually, no.
Oh, that was coming out.
No, that was coming out day.
Yeah,
that was
yeah,
coming
yeah.
out day. But I think we can do the same
Sure.
for Pride. You know, if someone like me who is a little about going to the big Pride festival because I'm going to feel claustrophobic, you know, what about something that's a little bit more intimate in that same vein of celebration, being fed, et cetera, all the things we've been talking about.
Well, you know, our retreat is what, May 2nd and 3rd, 2nd, 3rd, and 4th.
Yeah, so coming up.
And we talked about maybe a theme of friendship, but maybe we need to rebrand it to be in preparation for Pride, or come and enthusiastically acknowledge.
I think we can do.
Let's make up flag.
Let's make yeah, I mean, can we? I think that's a wonderful idea as far as what can we do at this particular spring mindfully gay retreat. We've talked about, you know, friendship and what that looks like and how that works, community building. But yeah, maybe it's a preparation of Pride, and maybe we make it a Pride experience. This can be our Pride celebration. So many wonderful ideas.
Heart circles, ritual, heart circles, yoga, meditation, community, connection. Like, we could get our Pride bubble fill and then show up in June and
be
pop
ready
it.
and be ready, you know, or repeat what we did at the retreat. You know, maybe we generate something that is very inviting and enticing, and it was fulfilling for our participants. They want to do it again. They want more of it.
It would be interesting. We're brainstorming here.
Yeah. Don't mind us.
But wouldn't it be interesting to have a booth area, or to have an area that was mindfully gay, and we could even like tent it off in some way, but where guys could come and just like have an ongoing heart circle, or an ongoing sense of communion and community. We don't have to promote anything, just come and have a space to get in touch with the energy of your heart and what it means to be queer. Or create an active bulletin board where people, what does Pride mean to me? And
I like that.
Without using the word Pride,
Yeah.
describe what Pride means to me.
Yeah. I see that at Pride as a booth. I see that at this retreat too. I think we can really create our own Pride celebration at this retreat. You know, we may not have enough days because it is a kind of a short weekend. There's not a lot of time as far as the retreat is concerned, but I always have visions or fantasies of doing, you know, like a little talent show or a drag show or something at our retreats, because we've done those in the past, right? It's just something fun and lighthearted, a poetry reading, or, you know, what do they call those? Not slam poetry, or
it's outside my
open mic kind of a thing,
mic,
you know, kind of an open mic thing, just something where people can express themselves.
The fairies would do no talent contests.
Yes, something like that.
That would be, some of the ones that I've gone to are just really, again, quite amazing, of no talent.
Right.
But, you know, just because we have to kind of wind things up here, like, look at what's happening.
Yeah.
You and I are just kind of talking and brainstorming because we dared to ask questions outside of the preconditioned norm, right? Pride is this. Well, no, pride's what you make it. And so what happens, and to the viewers and to those listening, what would happen if 2 or 3 of your friends sat down and said, yeah, how can we make this more ritualistic? How can we make this more heart-centered? How can we make this more spirit-centered? Like, how do we shape the experience so that we're not just being tugged along by the societal norms, but that we're actually creating them,
right,
and reshaping the narrative for ourselves? And I'd be really curious when people listen to this, for them to text us back or send us an email.
Right.
I would love to hear the ideas.
Yeah.
And I don't know, I may go home and check and see if we can get a booth, because I think just having like the whiteboards and getting people to take a Sharpie and just,
Yeah.
what does pride mean to you?
People would dig that, I think.
But it has to be online, so I don't want to just. I don't want graffiti.
Right. So just to reiterate, we would love to get your suggestions, your ideas, your thoughts. Send us a text through the platform on which you're listening to this podcast. If you're watching this on YouTube, just you write a comment, or even just go to mindfullygay.com. You can just send us emails. Just get in touch with us. We want to hear from you. I know there's some folks out there that we are in contact with that do give us feedback, and we really appreciate it. You can do the same thing. You can be anonymous. You can say who you are. Doesn't matter. And another reiteration, our spring retreat is May 4th through, is that correct? No, it's May 2nd through the 4th. May 2nd through the 4th. So actually, it's actually a month before Pride in Salt Lake City. Pride is you typically celebrate at the end of June. We do ours at the beginning of June. And so that retreat could possibly be the beginning of your Pride celebration. We would love to have you.
Yeah, great. I'm looking forward to this.
Yes, I'm excited.
Tomorrow, even though we're recording this at the end of February, but tomorrow night we're doing Sweat Lodge ceremony every other month.
Mm-hmm.
And this March we almost have a full lodge.
Wow.
And that's exciting to me because the first time we did it, we had like 4 or 5 people show up. Now we're having 18 to 20 show up.
Yes, that's fantastic. Yeah. So go to the website again, mindfullygay.com, and you'll see on the calendar the Sweat Lodge events, and it's free of charge.
Yeah.
And it's a wonderful way to be part of community.
Yeah, and with spring and summer just around the corner, we're gonna go back to doing some hiking.
Yeah.
We're gonna do some movie nights on the back patio. Last year we did Jaws. It was great. So I'm kind of anticipating a lot more opportunities to generate some community engagement.
Absolutely.
All right.
Well, that being said, we thank you so much for tuning in.
Jazz fingers.
Jazz fingers. And so we say goodbye for now. Thanks so much for tuning in to this episode of the Mindfully Gay podcast.
We'd love to hear your Pride stories, what it means to you, and how you plan to celebrate this year. Share with us on Instagram at mindfully_gay.
And don't forget to visit our website, mindfullygay.com, where you can find upcoming free social events, community gatherings, and more ways to stay connected.
If you found something meaningful in this episode, please rate and review us. It helps others in our community discover the show. Until next time, stay proud and stay mindful.